The first discussion topic on today's Peace and Prosperity is the prospect of the resumption of working-level talks between Pyongyang and Washington. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun arrived in Seoul on August 20th, which marked the conclusion of a joint military exercise between South Korea and the U.S. There are high expectations that North Korea and the U.S. could resume their dialogue following a near two-month stalemate. Today's second topic is North Korea's motive behind seeking closer ties with its allies. The regime state media reported that high-level military officials from North Korea and China met in Beijing. Meanwhile, in Pyongyang, North Korea held high-level diplomatic talks with Russia. The last topic is Seoul's withdrawal from a military intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo, known as GSOMIA. Following a National Security Council meeting on August 22nd, the South Korean government announced it will not extend GSOMIA.
백색 국가 리스트에서 우리나라를 제외함으로써 양국 간 안보 협력 환경에 중대한 변화를 초래한 것으로 평가했습니다.
The presidential office said continuing the pact no longer meets national interest, citing a grave change in security cooperation conditions. How will Seoul's decision to pull out of GSOMIA affect the three-way security cooperation among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, and security dynamics surrounding the Korean peninsula? To discuss the latest developments, our host, Hong Young-sik Research Fellow at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korea Studies, is joined by Professor Choo Jae-woo from Kyung Hee University in the studio. We also connect with guest experts on Skype, including Thomas Countryman, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Nonproliferation, and Kristine Lee, Research Associate at the Center for New American Security.
Hello and welcome to our program. The latest whirlwind of news surrounding the Korean Peninsula includes U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun's trip to Seoul, stronger ties among North Korea, China, and Russia, and the fate of GSOMIA, a military information sharing pact between South Korea and Japan. To take a deep dive into these issues, we are joined by Professor Choo Jae-woo of Kyung Hee University. Welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Right, my first question is whether it is set that the resumption of working level negotiation between United States and North Korea.
Yes, working level meeting might be resumed, but for what purposes and what kind of agenda they're going to talk about, we don't know yet.
But it's going to happen.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
good.
working level, it'll happen. And that's why Biegun is here, and I think is on his way to China and to talk about this too.
All right, so North Korea is going to keep its promises that they're going to talk to the U.S. after the joint military exercise between South Korea and the U.S. ended.
Yes, supposedly so, because Trump obviously declared that he already received a letter of that contains.
Beautiful letter,
That's right.
right?
That contains a word of promise from Kim Jong-un.
Some people mentioned the significance of high-level officials of the United States and North Korea meeting at the United Nations General Assembly meeting
Yes.
taking place in September in New York City.
Yes, because traditionally it has been one of the most comfortable venues for both North Korea and the United States over the years. If there's a stalemate of talks, then that's the best possible venue for them to reach out and have the consultation.
Is it kind of a replacement for the potential meeting at the ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum, that did not happen?
Yes, plus ARF, the United States has very limited room for activities, so that's why probably, best alternative would be the United Nations General Assembly.
Okay, then we have to keep our eyes on September in New York City.
Indeed, absolutely.
Right. As usual, now we turn to an expert in the United States to broaden our perspective on the issue. We have on the line Mr. Thomas Countryman, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Nonproliferation. Hello.
It's an honor to be on the show with you today. Thank you.
All right, very pleased to have you here. The U.S. State Department said U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Mr. Stephen Biegun's visit to South Korea is to further strengthen coordination on North Korea's final and fully verified denuclearization. As a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, do you predict negotiations will now begin in earnest to tackle the essence of Pyongyang's nuclear issues, or would it be rather superficial?
Well, there are several points that are important about that U.S. statement. First, coordination between the United States and the Republic of Korea must remain strong. There is a tendency on the part of President Trump when he negotiates with the North Korean leader to forget about South Korea. And of course, Mr. Kim himself would be happy if he only had to deal with the United States. But we only get to a successful outcome, a genuine easing of tensions and progress, if Seoul and Washington are in the closest possible alignment on their goals. So it's always important for Mr. Biegun to consult with the South Korean leadership, which has played a very skillful diplomatic role for the last year and a half. Second, it's important that the United States restate that the goal is full and fully final verified denuclearization. That is the goal. And before you go into any negotiation, you should have in mind what's the ultimate goal. But at the same time, it is true that the North Korean leader has not committed to the same things that President Trump believes North Korea has committed to. And therefore, even while you're restating that goal, you have to be careful to have a realistic expectation about what the next round of high-level negotiations can achieve. So I try to be optimistic. I think it's a positive thing that the Trump administration has reached out directly at the highest level and is making this effort. I don't have any inside information. I only have hope that the two sides will come to this next meeting with a more realistic attitude and a more limited set of goals.
Okay, I'd like to listen to your opinion on the criticism in Seoul and Washington that President Trump's muted response to North Korea's test firing of missiles has actually emboldened North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to keep testing those missiles and exacerbated the tension on the Korean peninsula. Your take on this?
It is important that the United States speak up when North Korea tests ballistic missiles. This is a violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and the United States relies on the Security Council and its resolutions for all of its North Korean policy. So for the U.S. to have been so quiet, I think is not the wisest path. It is necessary for the U.S. to react and say clearly this is a violation. But it is also important that the United States not overreact and not take such strong measures, either verbally or in terms of new economic pressure, that it gives North Korea an excuse to avoid coming back to the table. We can be strong on this issue. Second, it's important to note that North Korea has continually tested new weapons and new missiles throughout the last decades, and it proceeds both on a scientific or an engineering development path. It also uses these as political signals. And the political signal that Mr. Kim would most like to get across is to somehow separate Seoul from Washington. He would like President Trump to be happy that he's not testing long-range intercontinental missiles, but at the same time is happy to make the citizens of South Korea worry about the shorter-range missiles. It is important that Seoul and Washington, neither of them overreact. This is a steady, slow, steady increase in North Korea's missile capability. But in fact, North Korea has had the capability to launch thousands of missiles and rockets against South Korea for many years. So it's not a dramatic change in the security situation, and it's one where the U.S. and the Republic of Korea have to respond, but respond wisely and with maturity.
Great. Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary Countryman, for joining us today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to my friends in the Republic of Korea.
Indeed. President Moon Jae-in said, now is the last hurdle and a golden opportunity in the dialogue process. Here's more on the story.
아마도 한반도의 비핵화와 평화 구축을 위한 전체 과정에서 가장 중대한 고비가 될 것입니다. 국민들께서도 대화의 마지막 고비를 넘을 수 있도록 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다. 이 고비를 넘어서면 한반도 비핵화가 성큼 다가올 것이며 남북 관계도 큰 진전을 이룰 것입니다. 남북 미를 비롯한 관련 국가들과 우리 모두는 지금의 이 기회를 천금같이 소중하게 여기고 반드시 살려내야 합니다.
Professor Choo,
Yes.
I sense the genuine and sincere attitude in President Moon Jae-in's remark to improve inter-Korean relations and other issues. Then why has the North Korean leadership been so hostile, relentlessly hostile to Moon Jae-in government?
I think they're playing this blame game.
Blame game.
Yes. They don't want to attribute to the failure of the talks of Hanoi last February to the United States, but they must find a scapegoat. And I think they're looking at South Korea because we proclaim ourselves to be a mediator, and that we're supposed to mediate between the two countries and bring some substantial issues and cut some confidence to the table. But obviously, as the talks failed, then I think they need to find a scapegoat, and I think they're finding it in South Korea.
Okay, then if there be working level negotiation
Yes.
take place between United States and North Korea,
Yes.
with or without South Korea as a mediator, then
Yes.
would you see that it'll be more successful in a new situation then?
Yes, I think that's why Mr. Biegun is here, and I think they need to coordinate their positions and policies and their outlooks of the talks. Otherwise, I think the trilateral cooperation, or even to the extent it could affect the bilateral relationship, not only inter-Korean relationship, but also the United States and North Korea.
So it'll be substantial
Yes, hope so.
as a turning point?
Hope so. Hope
You
so.
hope so? Right, you remain positive.
Yes.
Right. Meanwhile, North Korea has once again turned to its traditional allies, China and Russia. We'll discuss the intention behind this after watching this short clip.
A group of North Korean military officials led by Kim So-gil, director of the General Political Bureau of the North Korean People's Army, arrived in Beijing on August 16th. The delegation's visit to China has attracted attention as it came amid North Korea's continued missile launches. North Korean media reported that Kim met with his Chinese counterparts, including Miao Hua, director of the Political Work Department of China's Central Military Commission, and Zhang Yuxia, vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and discussed ways to elevate bilateral military cooperation to the next level.
조중 두 당 두 나라 사이의 관계를 깊이 있게 더욱 발전시키는 것은 두 나라의 공동의利益에 부합되며 지역의 평화와 안정 발전에 유리하다고 평가하셨습니다.
Meanwhile, North Korea held high-level diplomatic talks with Russia in Pyongyang. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Igor Morgulov visited the North Korean capital from August 14th to the 16th, where he sat down with North Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee, a key figure in the nuclear negotiations with the U.S. Russian President Vladimir Putin reportedly sent a congratulatory message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Korea's Liberation Day, promising he would strengthen bilateral cooperation with North Korea and contribute to ensuring stability and security on the Korean peninsula. With the ongoing Seoul-Tokyo trade spat posing a risk to the trilateral alliance among South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, North Korea is bolstering ties with its traditional allies.
Well, this apparently makes the first time that North Korea engaged in a very serious and big-scale military cooperation with China and Russia.
Yes.
What's behind this North Korea's action?
I think they're going by their words that was addressed by Chairman Kim Jong-un early this year.
You mean new path?
Yes, new path, indeed. In his New Year's address, he emphasized that if he cannot really rely on the United States and South Korea for his security and economic reasons, then he would be forced to choose the so-called new path. And that new path was clearly implied that his choice would remain with China and Russia.
Whatever you call this, a
Yes.
new path
Yes.
or China card.
Yes.
How do you see its likelihood of success?
In the past, I think we can only go back to past, and if we go back to past, it has been quite successful and effective, because obviously North Korea has to hedge its interest against the United States and put its stake on cooperation with China and Russia, and it worked out pretty well in the past.
But it seems like China has its own plate full of
Yes.
issues and problems, including the huge protests in Hong Kong.
Yes, and
So can China exercise any influence on North Korea?
yes, and also the trade issue with
Right,
trade conflict
trade
with the
issue too.
United States. Yes, China's hand is really full right now. But if we look at the past couple of years since the Singapore summit in 18, and since then, if you look at it, it seems like the United States and China would like to separate the issue to a certain distance in dealing with this North Korea, where they see the common interest eclipse.
Separation.
Yes.
All right. We have another expert from overseas joining us, Ms. Kristine Lee, Research Associate at the Center for New American Security. Hello.
Yep, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Very pleased to have you here.
Thank you.
Amid the lack of progress in North Korea-US dialogue, North Korea is increasingly turning to China and Russia. What do you make of this, and how is this development being perceived in the United States?
Sure. So that's a really great question. And I think that, at least in the United States, there's sort of a lack of longer term strategic thinking about what China's long term ambitions are with regards to North Korea and the Korean Peninsula at large. And so I think North Korea has been doing a lot of this sort of broader regional strategic thinking. And so it's been remarkably adept at playing major or great powers off of one another. In this particular instance, the United States and China. And so I think it's using these very public summits in Beijing and Moscow to signal to the United States and South Korea that it has many other options and pathways to development and prosperity, and that it's able to use its historic relationship with Beijing to move towards economic prosperity without having to give up its nuclear weapons arsenal.
Okay, Dr. Lee, I have one question. In recent times in Northeast Asia, North Korea, Russia, China have been increasing their military presence in the region. And some see this development as a reaction to Donald Trump's America First policy. What's your take on this?
I think that's absolutely right. So, President Trump, as you know, has expressed disdain on multiple occasions for what he personally views as sort of unfair burden sharing in its alliance commitments in Northeast Asia. And so, this past year of negotiations around the special measures agreement, or the sort of cost sharing arrangement between the United States and South Korea for alliance management, has been especially tricky because of the sentiments that the president has expressed. And I think in many ways, other major players like China and Russia are using this sort of these pressures on the traditional U.S. alliance system in Asia to sort of expand their own spheres of influence. And China, in particular, it's very well known that it's trying to and is establishing hegemony in the Asia Pacific region, and it's sort of what it wants the U.S. alliance system in Asia to fracture and fragment and militarily or otherwise. And so I think, is very much seeing this as a target of opportunity and therefore expanding its military engagements across the entirety of the Asia Indo-Pacific region.
Ms. Lee, thank you very much for your excellent analysis.
Thank you.
Professor Choo, it seems like there are two big walls coming closer and closer and squeeze South Korea. What are the options for South Korea?
Well, we have to play all three parties, the United States, China, and North Korea, off each other. And I think we should also insert and invite Japan to this game. And I think if we try to put some pressure on Japan, that we can in return create some or gain some more greater room of maneuverability.
On August 22nd, South Korea announced it is scrapping the bilateral intel sharing pact with Japan.
정부는 한일 간 군사 비밀 정보 보호에 관한 협정 지소미아를 종료하기로 결정하였으며 협정에 따라 연장 통보 시한 내에 외교 경로를 통하여 일본 정부에 이를 통보할 예정입니다.
GSOMIA is a military information sharing pact that allows South Korea and Japan to exchange information, including spy satellite, North Korea, and more. The two sides have been renewing the agreement every year since 2016. The decision came after President Moon Jae-in held meetings with the National Security Council.
양국 간 안보 협력 환경에 중대한 변화를 초래한 것으로 평가했습니다. 이러한 상황에서 정부는 안보상 민감한 군사정보 교류를 목적으로 체결한 협정을 지속하는 것이 우리의 국익에 부합하지 않는다고 판단하였습니다.
To be shocking to many people, South Korean government decided not to renew GSOMIA this year.
Yes.
How would you assess its ripple effect, its future?
Yes, if we just broaden the picture a little bit, I don't think that's a good diplomatic move personally, because going back to the inauguration period of Moon Jae-in's government in 2017, then as soon as he took over, he refuted his predecessors' diplomatic dealing and outcomes of the Comfort Woman. And now he's going with GSOMIA, which was also ratified by his predecessor. So if we continue to deny the past in our relationship with Japan, I think it's just going to undermine our diplomatic credibility.
Okay. You mentioned the current spat between Seoul and Tokyo, focus on historical issues and export control.
Yes.
And there has been speculation that since the United States seems to be very reluctant to be a mediator between South Korea and Japan, two allies, maybe China can fill in as a mediator. What do you think of this possibility?
I think that's a really tough game to play for China, really, seriously, because GSOMIA is, that's why this GSOMIA coming into play is not a good idea in solving this trade conflict between our country and Japan, because GSOMIA is related with implications, strategic implications to THAAD. So if you put yourself in China's shoe, they will welcome the idea of getting rid of GSOMIA.
Okay, right.
Yes. In light of, in view of THAAD. So for China, they have less choice than we can possibly
But
imagine.
China must be very interested in forging trilateral free trade agreement with Japan and South Korea.
Yes, that's right. That's on the economic front.
Right.
But since our government, took this military issue into this trade issues, and I think that's undermined the prospect of China's role in mediating the two countries.
Right, indeed. We are living in a very dynamic and complex world.
Yes, yes.
Professor Choo Jae-woo, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight.
Thank you.
The Blue House says its decision to walk away from GSOMIA will not hurt South Korea-U.S. relations, but rather upgrade it. Now, less than a day ago, the Blue House announced that it will not renew its military intelligence sharing pact with Japan. But this decision has been facing backlash from not only Japan, but also the United States, who has expressed disappointment over this decision that it says undermines trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. South Korea's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Hyun-jung, however, said again that the decision was made under coordination with the U.S., especially between the two national security councils. It's true that the U.S. wished to extend the military agreement, but the senior official is confident the bilateral alliance will become more robust after this decision. He also mentioned that phone discussions between President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump can be considered if necessary. And addressing security concerns, while there may be concerns as to the resulting lack of military intelligence, Kim said South Korea will actively make use of TISA. TISA, or the Trilateral Information Sharing Agreement, is a pact established between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan in 2014. It enables the exchange of classified information regarding North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, but information would have to flow through the U.S., meaning it will not be real time.
South Korean government has just decided not to renew the GSOMIA with Japan. Having prudently reviewed all the options related to the issue, the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea announced that it would not renew the GSOMIA because Japan has opted out South Korea as a genuine security partner, and South Korea has to do quid pro quo. The decision will remain South Korea out of the trilateral security cooperation net with the United States and Japan, and it would undermine Seoul's own claim that Japan's decision to put South Korea under export control would undermine trilateral security cooperation, as two wrongs do not make one right. And these are all the issues we have prepared for you today. We hope you join us again next week. Thanks for watching.